Well, I guess in the last few years, about 4 years ago, my mother, Jo Nelson, died, and after a couple weeks stay in the hospital, and then while she was there, my dad fell, and he went, and so we're having both of them in the hospital at the same time. And my daughter was supposed to get married at the end of the month, and it's just a really busy December, and I guess we were made aware of health issues we didn't know about.
Kathryn's mom died on the 15th. We buried her on the 18th. David was released from the hospital on the 24th, and then Kendall was married on the 31st, Kendall and Clinton.
Mm-hmm. And I guess we thought we were going to be empty nesters, but God kind of had some other plans for our life. Dad had Parkinson's, and Mom had been taking care of him like 24 hours a day. We'd see him once a week, but then, after being in the hospital and coming home, we knew things were a lot different and had to change.
I think we just didn't know how much Jo was doing just by David's condition when we were really shocked by what we saw, and realized she probably worked herself to death taking care of him. We just weren't aware of it. And so we encourage people who have older adults, stop in every once in a while, spend the night. You may not know what's really going on. And then shortly after that, Eve was born to our DL, our son DL, and Katie. They are students in Fort Worth, Texas. And moved amniotic band syndrome. And so we received a call from DL. How far along was Katie?
I think about 16 weeks. It was a little bit early because they were helping a pregnancy center learn how to use their machine.
Yeah. And they have an incredible story themselves, but they detected an abnormality, and then she went to have a very extensive MRI, not an MRI, ultrasound, and showed that this little baby, her left arm and her right leg had been severed early in the pregnancy by this what's called amniotic band syndrome, and it's just in the uterus, some of the fibers or something become, they tangle up in the baby's parts. 80% of the babies with as much damage as she had would die. Well, the first advice they got from that was to terminate the pregnancy. So after they found a new group to work with, we began to pray for them, and the news that they would get was not always good. The one good arm she had they thought would be atrophied, and so we just didn't really know what kind of shape her face would be in, and a lot of things. And she was born very strong and vigorously. Her mind's clear as a bell, very intelligent young lady, but that was an event that took place. We had 2 other grandchildren, and then tell them about Lissy.
And then they were really excited, DL and Katie, were about to have their second baby, and went in for their ultrasounds like kids have now. And plus, he's always kind of, I'm not sure, they always have a suspect of some kind of blood disorder with her, so she goes in to a perinatologist, and the baby was measuring kind of small, and they said, well, this could be several things. We need to test you. And early on, they thought she might have this CMV virus. And so every week, she'd go in twice a week to check and see the size of the baby, and she never went out of the parameters. She'd get really close to being out of the parameters of, and be in the real super danger zone, but she never quite went out. So we kind of thought we were over the hurdle, and had a perfect delivery, and for like 24 hours everything was wonderful. And then they said, well, before we leave you, I see on here you had CMV, mother, and we need to test the baby. And they tested the baby, and she had the virus, and then it was just like, oh no, here we go again. And had sonogram done of her brain. She had scar tissue. They sent her over to the Children's Hospital, did an MRI, and they kind of had their fears were realized again that she had some moderate to, extensive brain tissue, had been scarred. But the baby looks perfect. She's acting perfect, but they were just devastated again.
And different neurologists have given very good reports as far as her development, that this virus will show itself later in life, but the things that they're seeing now that she's doing, they're very optimistic that perhaps it may not be as catastrophic as the MRI shows. One of the wonderful things that we learned is that children with this, or with the amount of brain damage that she has, are born blind and deaf and with organs that are dysfunctional, and she was blessed with great eyesight, great hearing. All the organs are just fine, and you would look at this little child, would not know a thing's wrong with her. So we're celebrating that. Thinking like with Joe's death, we knew that when you're in your 80s like that and your health starts failing, we die. That's just part of what happens. I know our initial reaction with Eve, her being just a little baby with her whole life ahead of her, was a lot more difficult for us to. That was one of those days where we just fell down on the floor just weeping. It was just hard news to get. And DL and Katie, trying to talk on the phone with your son, daughter-in-law, and they too broken up. It was just a hard time. It was their first child, so it was sad for her. It was sad for them. That one hit us pretty hard, and Lissy as well. I thought it was here we go again.
But I don't think either of us think that there's really anything unusual about hard times, because everybody's going to have some. It's just, it's just going to be different for different people, and you can be sad for a little bit, but ultimately it's your faith in God that, and the church that surrounds you. I'm just thankful. I mean, it's not just a few years back, but I mean, my whole life has pretty much been spent here in this church, and they're family, and they just support you and hold you up through the times that you just really need it. I think as I've seen God work in our situation, I kind of see Him bringing us around people that maybe we wouldn't have contact with. And then you have people telling us, sharing with us things that they've gone through, and that, they've come out on the other side. And I mean, whether it's, parents that they've, had to deal with dementia, children with disabilities, or children with mental, deficiency. You just get a lot of, I like just people that just want to help you. They want to share, not really help, but they want to share in that burden, that sadness, and let you know that it's not the end. That there's more, and you'll be happy again. And I guess the other thing is just the people that come in contact with that you might be a witness to. Not just the ones that are talking to you, but the ones that you will come in contact with that you get to talk to about why you're not devastated, what gives you that peace, and through the midst of the storms that come, that you have not just the peace, but a future that's not, this isn't our home, and their little bodies will be perfect in heaven, and I just look forward to that day.
We have heard it said, but with the very kindest intention of all, that God never gives us a load heavier than we can bear, never gives us more than we can bear. And what I want to communicate is that there's another philosophy or a belief that's out there that God helps those who help themselves. I put these two on the same shelf. God doesn't give us more than we can bear. I'm going to say this, we were devastated. We were flattened out. I mean, was it more than I could bear? Yes. Was it more than I think my kids could bear? I would say absolutely. Or Kathryn. And we just, it really took us a lot to the core of our beliefs, trying to process why and how do these things happen. And we really just had to give that burden to God because there were no answers. So rather than trying to figure that out and find a place that we could find some type of way to bear that or understand it, there was none. And so it was just one of these things by faith. We had to understand, yes, God has something different in mind than we can understand or comprehend. And it would be more than we would be able to carry. And rather than being troubled by that, I found great relief in that. It was that unusual peace. And we talk about people praying for us. I hear that a lot of times. We felt your prayers. I didn't really know what that, I mean, is it a magic feeling? Well, I have to say it kind of is. It's an unusual thing because you realize you're being allowed into a certain place of God's grace that you don't normally go. And I think that so much is people lifting us in prayer, that our faith remained steadfast, our confidence in God grew. And so to answer the question, that was one of the things that we noticed. It was very much a strengthening process of our faith and a growing closer to God.